Hello, welcome to a quick demonstration on how you can calculate a t-statistic. T-statistic is a measure used in hypothesis testing to determine if there is a significant difference between the means of two groups. Right, so this step-by-step process really would require you to calculate the simple means, and in this particular case, using this particular data set, we have individual performances in each specific content area, and then we do have the state averages. So definitely there are going to be two groups of sample means, right? So here this is already done, right, just to kind of demonstrate that. So the school district averages have actually been calculated for each subject area, and then the standard deviation also needs to be calculated. It's actually been calculated here. Again, it's a fairly straightforward calculation. We can use the function in Excel, the standard deviation function, just like we used the average function there, right? And then of course we pick up the state mean, which is actually provided, which is the second group, right, of for our sample. And then of course we would need to know what the sample size is. Right, because we tend to use the sample size, for example, to calculate the standard error. Now here we can see that standard error has already been calculated for us, but guess what? We can actually recalculate that again. And basically standard error is calculated based on the standard deviation, right? So standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size. That's how we derive the standard error. So basically standard error, it actually measures the sampling error, right? So that's why it's actually based on how the data is dispersed within a data set, and of course adjusted for the sample size so that we can evaluate what the sample error is. And of course in the process we're actually able to determine whether the sample is going to be a true representation of the population. Right, so the standard error, we can copy that across, and then at this stage now we are actually able to quickly calculate what the t-statistic is actually going to be, right? And once again, as I've mentioned earlier, it is a measure that is used to in hypothesis testing to determine if there is a significant difference between the means of two groups. So now how do we do that? So all we do here is we find the difference between the school district averages, which is the first sample, and then the state mean, which is the second sample, and we can just divide that by the standard error like that. And before you know it, we've got our t-statistic. Now, one may argue that, well, what's the use of this? How can we actually use it? You are not able to use t-statistic independently, because normally you then compare the t-statistic with the critical value, right? So critical value can actually be derived from the tables. You can look up the tables that will have information already handy for you, right? But it's important to understand how the calculation is actually done. So basically then, once you have your t-statistic, you can actually compare now the critical value, which will be the kind of the cut-off point. So if your t-statistic is larger than the critical value, then we reject the hypothesis, right? Otherwise, we do not reject. So if for any reason the t-statistic is actually smaller than the cutoff, which will be the critical value, which unfortunately is not available here, then of course we do not reject. So basically that's the base of calculation. But just also to show you that you could combine the t-statistic, or rather the calculation of the standard error, together with the with the difference. So instead of actually having to calculate the standard error separately, you can actually combine them all. And how would you do that? You enter the equal sign, open parenthesis. So we said what's the difference between the school district averages and the state mean. right? And then we say divided by the standard error. So in case you had not calculated the standard error, what you can then do is you do an open parenthesis, then you click on the standard deviation, right? Divided by the square root of the sample size. And you'll see that it's going to give us exactly the same result, right? So the only difference is that instead of calculating standard error separately, here we've actually to combine it in one formula, right? So otherwise, I just wanted to make sure that you also know this particular alternative, just in case you wanted to use that particular method. Otherwise, that's my demonstration there for you. I hope you find value in understanding how to calculate the t-statistic. It's a very important statistical element in statistics that can really come in handy depending on what work you'll actually be doing, especially in hypothesis testing. So it's actually an alternative for the statistical significance that we normally use, the p-value, right? So it still arrives at the same result, but with a slight twist. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. And of course, if you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.